Hi everyone, how are we doing?
Hi, Chris.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to send out a reminder that we'll be starting in 2 minutes. We are currently on mute, but the webinar will be starting in 2 minutes.
Hi everyone, it's Rob Mukherjee here from EveryCloud. As Chris said, we'll just give everyone another minute or so, and then we'll crack on. Okay, I've just heard the bells go for 2 o'clock. Chris, you happy for me to crack on?
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today for this webinar in partnership with 8x8 and Call Northwest and Southwest Contact Centre Forum. My name is Rob Mukherjee. I'm the Director of Transformation at EveryCloud Consultancy, and I'll tell you a little bit more about us in a moment. We're also joined by Chris Marron of 8x8 and delighted to be joined by Laura Dransfield from Slater Gordon Solutions Motor also, who've recently moved around 250 agents to remote working. And Laura will be talking about how Slater and Gordon dealt with the immediate and current crisis, the coronavirus crisis, with the help of EveryCloud and 8x8. So who are EveryCloud? Just a brief introduction. We're a leading cybersecurity and digital workplace specialist that helps organizations across various sectors, drive the most out of cloud services, including cloud communications and cloud contact centers, et cetera, And we've got clients across the UK, and our main offices are in London and Manchester, although obviously you'd expect we're all at home at the moment. For those of you not familiar with 8x8, 8x8 is all about transforming the future of business communications, really, through a software as a service solution, covering voice, video, chat, contact center, and enterprise class API solutions. And then from Slater Gordon's perspective, one of our mutual clients, Slater Gordon are a market leading provider of legal services in the UK, and one of the largest investment-owned legal services brands. What we'll be covering today is the steps that businesses can take to ensure that they continue to deliver the exceptional experiences that customers demand, and how you overcome the challenges of moving an entire customer service operation smoothly to remote working. We'll talk about why the overall landscape has changed in the wake of the current crisis and what these changes mean for contact centres going forward. We'll look at how businesses can avoid the pitfalls and overcome the challenges and leverage opportunities presented by this new way of working. And we're scheduled to finish at 2:40 p.m. So I really appreciate everyone joining us, ahead of the 2 o'clock kickoff. If you do wish to ask any questions, you'll see a hand icon in the bottom left corner of your screen. So just press that icon to get our attention. We will be having a Q&A session once we get through the content. And you can also direct your questions to Mohammed Ibrahim by private message. And you'll see, if you look at the live chat now, you'll see a little note from Mohammed that you can just contact him on. As I say, there's live chat available, so you'll see the icon for chat in the bottom left-hand corner next to the raising hands. But without any further ado, I'm delighted to hand over to Chris Marron, who's Director of Market Intelligence at 8x8. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Rob. And yeah, thank you very much, Laura. Thank you very much, Rob, for joining us. So just running us quickly through the agenda that we have today. We'll start off with some sort of information from Slater and Gordon just on how they've dealt with the coming crisis, the challenges they've faced, and how they overcame them. Then we'll move into looking at how customer service has changed given the current environment, given the current crisis. We'll then move into some pitfalls, challenges, and opportunities, and then we'll be looking to have roughly 10 minutes of Q&A at the end, just to answer any questions that the audience might have. So, on that note, moving into the piece from Slater and Gordon, if I pass across to you, Laura, could you tell us a little bit more just about how Slater and Gordon have dealt with the crisis?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris. So I'll start off with kind of saying how our BCP plan was. So we had two BCP plans, one an overall group one and one for our motor business. So I actually head up the FNOL centre within our motor business. In that area, our BCP plan was really focused around the amount of capacity we had in other sites and our ability to be able to transfer staff to other sites really easy. Probably something like many we didn't actually ever have to implement. And when this crisis came along, although our group overall BCP plan had technology already ready to go and enable staff to be able to work from home pretty much immediately, the motor business didn't. So we started off kind of like everybody. We did the social distancing. We moved people that had the ability to work from home immediately. So that was really your outbound areas and also the ones that are doing kind of back office work. We had trialled working from home, but that was really for our management team, and we were doing that on the basis of looking at how our management team could be more productive within the hours. So we know as team leaders, they're constantly asking questions throughout the day. So what we did is we trialled it to enable them just to go home, get things like one-to-ones, row, do their audits, that kind of working from home admin activity. So although we trialled it for our advisors, it was something that we'd never ever looked at before, and it was in being honest, in none of our plans. Obviously, COVID-19 hit, and the organisation had moved everybody home. We'd initially worked at immediately getting our vulnerable people working from home, which allowed us to do the 2 metre gap and the social distancing. And our aim within a 7-day period after we'd implemented the social distancing was to actually shut the office and get everybody working from home. Our gap was our inbound telephony, so we had no ability to take inbound calls with our current provider that we had, so we couldn't actually move our contact centre home. So we'd already been in partnership with 8x8. We were in scope for that technology being rolled out, but it was later this year that we'd planned to do that. And we'd obviously needed to get that delivered quickly for us to allow us to work from home. So working with them over a 7-day period, we took what was quite a complicated telephony system, simplified it as best that we could, and then we moved all our agents working from home within the space of a week. So that was 250 advisors that we got working from home. What the solution allowed us to do was it enabled us not only to answer inbound calls, like many in the contact centre, we obviously have wallboards. So as managers in that first week working from home, they didn't have visibility of what the advisors were doing. So they couldn't see productivity, they couldn't see by each account what the performance was, which is absolutely key because all our partners have individual KPIs. And by having the technology through the analytics part that's on 8x8, we can have that visibility now. So managers can see live the performance, our advisors can see who's available. So we've not got people going on breaks and lunches at the same time, which is obviously causing risk to our telephony performance. Whereas in the office, they can look over a bank and see if there's people available. So it really gives a full visibility to everybody to see what each other are doing, so we can still perform and give customers exactly the same service at home. The advisors can listen to their own calls, so that's the functionality again that we didn't have. And that's enabled us to continue doing development and coaching out of the office. So what's been really key to us is not only getting ourselves home and able to continue working for our customers, but also for the advisors to continue their development, which I think, was some things that was a concern that those things would have to stop. But this has allowed us to do that live auditing, while the call's going on, or the advisors can listen to the call afterwards with the manager, play it back, and can audit their own calls. So just last of getting everybody working from home, and what the technology has allowed us to do is not just obviously be able to answer inbound calls, not just to be able to see performance, but also to keep our advisors, our managers really engaged. So there's loads of different platforms working, and we have really used the 8x8 meetings. So obviously we're using that platform today. We've done things like quizzes over it, like many have done, different social events. We have done a number of training sessions over the platform. I know people have used all their forms and they've kind of had technical issues, which we luckily have had no issues with it, and was able to roll out everybody at home the new system, which I think was also, again, a concern of ours, was that we had this new product, but actually how we were going to be able to train it out to advisors who were already at home. And having the 8x8 technology allowed us to do that. And that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Laura. That was really insightful.
Thank you, Laura. There's just a couple of questions, Chris, come in while Laura's been talking.
Yep.
First one, how are you helping people to work from home where they might not have the most comfortable working environment? Say if they're used to working in a contact centre and they're just not used to working from home, they might not feel comfortable doing that. How do you help them?
Yep. So one of the things we've done is we've questionnaire everybody that is working from home. So the questionnaire obviously looks at kind of the environment the person's working in, what equipment have they got. So before leaving the office, we did a survey with everybody and spoke to all our staff and said, were they able to work from equipment they already had? Some were able to do that. If they weren't able to work from home because they didn't have equipment, then we purchased that for them. And then once we were working from home, we looked at supporting with them their environment. So if people were, sat on beds, then through the video conferencing that we've been done, we've noticed a number of kind of issues about that, where people haven't wanted to fill in on a questionnaire that was what they were sat working in. So with all those people where we've seen those circumstances, or where somebody said that they're having difficulty, whether it be the chair they're working on, or whether it be that they need a desk, we'd either purchase that for them or let them take it from our office.
Excellent. So you can see it's both feedback from the team, but also things you observe when you're interacting with the team. As you say, from video conference, it can become quite apparent.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other question, Laura, please, was what changes have you seen in the types of inquiries coming in and the timing of those inquiries? Are people asking different questions now that we're all self-isolating, and are they asking them at different times?
So timing, obviously our volume for those, the motor business is obviously car accidents. So what we have seen, you'll have seen the statistics on people on the road, it was 70% down. So our overall queries have reduced in line with that. The queries that we're getting from customers have changed. So we saw that our inbound volumes
changing going forward. What changes we've seen? What changes we've seen to the overall kind of way that businesses are delivering customer experience? So the first thing that I would note is we do see that sort of social distancing measures are likely to continue for some time to come. The government's policy is very much to flatten the curve and to reduce the overall burden on the health services, but that does also extend the duration of the crisis. We've got a significant duration of additional lockdown. We had 3 weeks just announced, and it seems likely it will be at least months of lockdown that we will be going through. As such, I think businesses have to be anticipating a prolonged period of disruption in various forms, and looking at the various levels of lockdown, potentially as well being in effect. That's going to place some new stresses on those businesses, and it's going to place some considerable stresses as well on employees and on customers. It's not going to be a sort of static setup. We will, I believe, continue to see changes. We'll see different challenges and different problems starting to come up for employees, and businesses will need to remain on their toes to deal with this. One of the things I think we will start to see is, as people start to become accustomed to the crisis itself and to the working from home, we're going to start to see customers and employees kind of moving from being focused on pulling together to get through the crisis, and then going back to kind of dealing with it as a new normal, and it becoming a kind of, this is business as usual again. As such, other businesses will be finding ways to return to normal operations. They'll be finding ways to get around the challenges that the crisis presents, and customers, very similarly to how customers historically have compared businesses to the best customer experience that they have from anyone. Customers will compare the experience that you deliver not just to your direct competitors, but it's why can't you be as convenient as Uber, or why can't you be as efficient as someone else? And what we will see is very much that principle continuing to impact businesses. So customers will very much be sort of saying, why can't you have dealt with the crisis as well as Slater and Gordon, or as well as someone else? It's that the ability to deal with the crisis will start to become a differentiator. It will be a source of either satisfaction for customers or dissatisfaction, depending on how businesses handle that crisis. And then just passing back to you, Laura, just to sort of talk about what you guys are seeing going forwards, and where you see the market adapting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So for our customers, like I said in the question, our customers have changed in the services that we need to give them. So obviously, our customers are people that have a requirement for mobility. So we're having a lot of key workers that come through. And we still have a service to provide them, because we need to let them continue to be able to go to work daily. They need our service to be quick and efficient so they can get back to normality as quick as possible. The biggest thing that we've tried to do with the remote working is obviously making sure that we offer the same service, making sure that our customers' data is secure. And it was one of the things why I think we shied away from it initially. I was a business, we don't actually take card payments from our customers, so there's no kind of security issues there. But with the 8x8 function, our customers want to ensure that if we are remote working, how is their data safe? With the 8x8 system, all the calls are recorded, so that's a functionality that we can go back and use any calls that the customer needs at a later date, potentially for court cases, or where we need to be able to recover the customer's costs. Our VPN that we use, you can't copy and paste out of it. So again, there's stamps every time somebody touches somebody's file. So if there was ever a case, you absolutely know everybody that's been on that file and their touches and the times, etc. So we're able to explain to our customers how we can keep their data safe. We can explain to customers how we are working with our suppliers to ensure that we continue to protect them. And that's the biggest thing for us, is that the customers still need to be able to do their day-to-day, but it's in a different environment. So we will be giving them a hire vehicle. So we work with our suppliers on making sure that hire vehicles have been deep cleaned. There's rules and regulations around who they will and won't deliver to if you've had kind of symptoms, etc. So that's an ever changing for us, and both our suppliers and partners have really supported in making sure that we can keep our customers safe, and that's the biggest one. For us also, an engagement of our people is that, like many people, we've turned around and said that COVID-19's meant that we are closer to our people than we ever have. For those that have seen us through the Core Northwest stuff that we've done, you'll see that when you visited our contact centre, we are all about people engagement. Monthly, there's quizzes and there's games that the agents are running and incentives. But remotely, we've all turned around and said we feel closer than ever. So the main important thing for us going back into the office, whenever that may be, is making sure that we can still turn around and say we feel closer to our people than ever. That's a really important one for us. And as a business, our number one priority at the minute is our people and their welfare, and making sure that we can still keep them engaged through this process. I think, again, it's allowed us to be more creative than ever before. So we have to change our processes regularly. For the first week of us going through this change, we have to change our processes on a daily basis. We're in a competitive market, and obviously when we put somebody into a hire vehicle, we have to recover that from the at-fault party. So again, our times after this will continue to be challenging as a business, because we will come under scrutiny as to why have we provided people services, why have people still needed to have a service from us. So we have to make sure that, and we are doing, weekly, we're reviewing all our processes to make sure that after this, we are in a position where we can continue in a strong business. Our next step as a business is, and we're currently planning on this, is our transition back. What that looks like, as you say, I think the world will look completely different for a long time. Our questions are, will social distances still apply? And if it does so, we know as a business that we will still have to have people working from home. Will our offices open at different times, and what will that mean to transitioning people back into the business? What are the processes that we've put in as part of this, and should they actually become our new BAU, because you're finding actually you're making your business more financially better, our customers' experience is a lot better. So what are those new processes that are actually good to continue doing as the new norm? And then will actually this lead to us having more people remote working from home in the businesses? Is one of the questions we're asking ourselves, is this an opportunity to have people working from home? We've seen our absence rates drop massively through this period. So this is an opportunity to be more efficient as an operation, as a business going forward, and while continuing to make sure that we're really focusing on our engagement with people and learning from what we've seen externally. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Laura. There's a couple of questions that are coming in the meantime. One, I think, one came in before you started talking about engagement. It was a question from Daniel. How do you ensure you keep your team motivated and engaged while we're working at home? And no sooner Dan asked that than you happen to move on to that. I think as well as the examples you gave, I think your final point about absence rates going down significantly is quite a telling result. So hopefully, Daniel, that answered your question. There's a question from Virginia, thank you, which is, how have you seen a better experience for your customers with your people working from home? So, with people working from home, how can you tell, what measures are you using? How do you tell that your customers are actually getting a better experience?
Yep, so we still audit. So one of the functions that is still in place is our audit team through this. We are heavily auditing calls. We are now auditing, because of the volume reductions that we've seen, it's meant that we can actually audit more cases than we generally would do. So we can see that customer experience that customers are having. And we're still reporting really highly in that areas, in the high 90s for satisfaction. Customers as well are telling us. So we have, within the last 1 month of working from home, we've still received 5-star Google reviews coming in, which is great for the advisors, for again on an engagement piece that we can go and share that. We've had one customer from one of our broker insurers that said they're so happy with the service that they were provided that they will now go and next year renew with them, which is great, because obviously then they don't have a policy with us. We work through brokers and insurers. So that's, for me, that's testament. If somebody wants to renew an insurer with one of our partners because of the service they've provided in this time, that's massive.
Smashing. Thank you, Laura. Chris.
Thank you very much, Rob. So I then want to move into talking a little bit about some of the pitfalls that are sort of emerging for companies, some of the challenges that companies are facing. and also to look at some of the opportunities that the changes are making for businesses, and how businesses can deal with each of those. So starting with the pitfalls, and again, I'd just like to ask the audience here, if you do have any questions, please do ask at any time. Please do feel free to put those questions into the chat or send them directly to Mo. The first thing I think that's worth noting is agents quite often aren't necessarily the best paid employees. Their work can quite often be boring, and even in a contact center, agents are quite often distracted. I mean, there's often problems with agents being on Facebook or browsing the web or playing solitaire in the background or whatever else. And as you move agents to working from home, at the start of a crisis, everyone's pulling together, everyone's trying to get through the crisis. But as time goes on, there's an awful lot of kind of distractions and potential ways that agents could be pulled from being 100% focused on the job. And some of those are entirely sort of innocent and unavoidable. It's having family at home. It's having the noise from the street outside. It's having whatever else is going on in your home. Some of them, though, are, agents don't have someone looking over their shoulder, so they have access to their personal devices. They have access to mobile phones, to TV, and it's important when you don't have that direct supervision over your agents that you start to look at how you can indirectly recognize the issues, and how also, I mean, to Daniel's question, how you keep your team motivated and engaged at the same time. Because motivated employees are much more likely to put the company first. So where you can't directly monitor your employees, it's very important to have exceptional reporting capabilities in the systems you use. You need to be able to know which calls are causing negative sentiment, where there might be issues, where agent performance might be dropping, and then to be able to do things like screen recording. You need to be able to see what your agent is doing at the specific time at which they're distracted, or what they're not doing as well. I mean, if they're not doing anything at all on their screen when they should be doing something, it's a good indication that they aren't necessarily as focused as they could be. And maybe that's because there's a baby screaming in the background. Maybe it's something else. But if you have that additional information, then it allows you to start to dig in. And if you have systems that and processes that enable you to get that information right from the get-go, then it prevents the issue from becoming a widespread problem. If agents know that they won't be able to get away with it, it doesn't become a sort of standard thing. Whereas if everyone's doing it, then suddenly all of your agents are kind of doing it, and it becomes a major crisis for the business. I think particularly on the engagement side, it is hugely important to keep in constant contact with your teams, to be having regular team meetings for your supervisors and managers, to be checking in on the people under them, making sure that they are doing very well, that they're continuing to be comfortable at home. It's an incredibly challenging time for a lot of people. It's, people might not be seeing girlfriends, boyfriends for a month. They might have financial difficulties because someone in the household has lost their job. They might have unwell relatives or at-risk relatives that they're worrying about. They might just be going stir crazy because of a bit of cabin fever. But it becomes especially important where you take your kind of fairly extroverted group of agents and you put them into a relatively isolated situation, that you find ways to keep in touch with them, that you find ways to enable those agents as well to reach out to each other, to ask the questions that they might well just ask in the office. I mean, often agents don't necessarily want to be seen to be asking questions they think they should know the answer to. So you need to be enabling them to find private ways to reach out to, say, Brian, who sits 3 desks down and has all of the answers, and to just quietly and privately ask him that question and ask what's going on. It's critical to keep that communication going, and to also keep the understanding of what's happening in the calls and the analysis of how your agents are interacting with your customers, so that you can spot those problem areas early on, so that you can act before it becomes an issue. Then moving on to some of the challenges. And again, we touched on that need for agents to understand what's going on, to be able to ask the questions. And you need to have a sort of cadence of, okay, here's what we need to broadcast out to everyone. Here's perhaps the team meetings we need to have. Here are the one-to-ones. But it's really not, it's not just enabling that overall feed of information, but also finding ways to enable those water cooler conversations, to enable people to have discussions that either might not necessarily need to be in a central forum, or that they might not be comfortable having in a central forum. It's especially critical, I think, given that business processes are having to change at a much higher rate. That for example, in Laura's example from Slater and Gordon, where you have hire companies where they can't necessarily deliver hire cars to certain customers, and they have to adhere to enhanced cleaning regimes. There's always going to be things that are changing from the business side, but also there are going to be cases from the customer side that aren't necessarily in your agent's experience of how to deal with, that aren't in your kind of set processes, and you absolutely need those communications lines to stay as active and open as possible, so that none of that slips through the cracks, so that you're able to react in the best possible way. Finally, I think it's very important to recognize that customers are also going through many of these same stresses. They're facing many of the same challenges, and they're going to be as stressed and as pressured as anyone else. So it's very important to be proactive in communicating to customers, in keeping customers aware of what's going on, how you're supporting them, how you're there for them, and for companies where you have increased loads, to look at self-service options to help deal with that load, to look at who you might be able to bring in to help deal with that load, to have a plan in place so that you are there and you're ready for your customers at a time of crisis. And that I think leads to an opportunity. It's very true in customer service that people really remember how you make them feel for a lot longer than they remember what you say or what you did. Very often customers will forget the exact details of what happened on a call or what was said. They'll forget what happened, but they'll remember how you felt. And that's particularly true in a crisis. People are under a lot more pressure. The emotions are a lot higher. They're more stressed. It's something that stands out in their memory. And then the way you make them feel there is a huge opportunity to build really lasting loyalty. It's very much the case that if you are there for your customers at the most difficult times, they will trust you to be there whatever else comes, because they've seen you be there when it's most challenging. Now, that might seem like a very tall order for a lot of contact centers, given the current crisis, given how much change there is, how much volume, how many challenges that they have technologically. But it is important to note this is an ongoing crisis. And as companies move past the immediate emergency, there will be some roles within the organization that you can pull in to help. You can repurpose some of those different departments or roles that might have had in-person contact with customers, that might be doing sort of jobs that you can't specifically do at the time. And with the social with the social distancing, it gives you some areas where if you can pull them in to help build that loyalty and to deal with the crisis. I think with companies moving entirely to home working, there's also a huge opportunity in that physical location is no longer necessarily important. So you can recruit from anywhere, not necessarily people local to your contact center. It opens up the possibility to bring in new areas of labor that you might not previously have had access to. But also to break down some of the silos that you have within your organizations, where physical location and where someone sits inside an organization are no longer a silo. You can start to really build up a different structure for your company to make some of those changes that you need to really deliver for your customers and to give them a great experience. So on that note, I would just like to then move in with about 7 minutes to go to any questions that we might have had for the audience. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening as well. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Chris. Interestingly, one of the questions kind of links to your last point about potentially people doing different roles. Says, I mean, and this could be for Laura, but also Chris, anything you see in the market. So the question is, do you have any employees who are now unable to do their usual job? And if so, how have you, what have you done with those employees? How have you made use of those employees, it says? So do you have any employees who are now unable to do their usual job? If so, how have you made use of those colleagues?
Laura, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, so for us, definitely within Motor, we've been able to move just everybody remote working. We've had some people where the volume of their work has dropped. So what we've used is multi-skilling. So both multi-skilling from department to department, but also within teams. So we've managed to virtually train those people on different skills. So whether it be a different work stream, or whether it's instead of booking hire vehicles and arranging services for customers, we've moved people onto the back end of our services, recovering cash because that work still remained at full capacity. So what we've done is just kind of multi-skilled where possible and moved, but the majority of our staff are still doing their own roles.
And yep. So I guess just to add to that, I think it actually raised a very good point from Laura's side in that that reskilling is critical. Yes, there's a lot of fires to fight at the moment. There's a lot of emergency response needed, but it's also critically important to be preparing yourself, to be building yourself to be better positioned going forwards. So any training that you can do for staff, any enablement that you can do, anything you can do to ensure that while you might be in crisis today, you are much better prepared for tomorrow, I would say is hugely valuable for businesses in general.
Great, thank you, Laura and Chris. That's quite a nice one. What's the most touching story you've heard from your contact centre where your advisors went the extra mile to help customers, or where you or the management team went the extra mile to help your advisors? And again, Laura, but also Chris, if anything you've particularly heard.
So for me, it's kind of a generic general one. So as a management team, they put together a 4-week plan of engagement. So every single week, pretty much every single other day, there's something happening. So whether it be a quiz, whether it's a virtual meeting, whether it's a riddle they're sending out, they did a 4-week plan to make sure that people were engaged throughout. One of the things that they did was set up a shout out. So within the office, we talked about it before, we had applause board cards. So if somebody did something that was the extra mile to their role, they would write a card out, give the person the card, and then it would go towards the employee of the month. Obviously, without the ability to hand somebody a card now, they've implemented a shout out for them. So within it, they just instant message a shout out for an advisor and something that they've done, or a team member. One of the things that an advisor did was for her child's nursery. So it's a little bit different to a normal story, but each child of the nursery painted a picture, I'm sure, with the help of the parent, and it was just a message about staying safe, staying home, and it's actually made the paper. So a really nice thing to share, and somebody's obviously seen that. One of the advisors had seen it in the local newspaper and put it forward for the Pride of Britain Award, who retweeted it on Twitter and then give the person a shout out within their office. So what was really nice to see was that it wasn't just somebody being noticed for something they've done on a work element. It was just something that they'd seen that they'd done out in the community as well.
And then, okay, so I think from the 8x8 side, the single most touching thing that I saw was we were working with one of the hospitals in Italy to enable their communications, but they were using as well our free meetings product to allow patients who are completely in isolation from the virus to connect with families. And one of the doctors actually shared with us a video he'd taken of an elderly Italian gentleman who'd been in a coma for a period with COVID-19, and it was the first call that he'd been able to have with his daughter and his grandson, and it was an incredibly touching video to see. That I think was the single one that was most touching for me.
Brilliant, 2 great stories. Thank you both. There's one more question I can see, which I think, Laura, you've kind of covered, I guess, but it says, have you seen any overall increase or decrease in productivity since people have moved to home working, and whether it's an increase or decrease? Do you think that's due to the crisis or due to home working itself?
For us personally, I'll let you guys kind of speak on your behalf, but for Slater and Gordon in the motor business, it's definitely due to the crisis as opposed to home working itself. I found productivity on the home working side is advisors are actually a lot more productive because they want to work, they haven't got those distractions, and when they're not working, that's the time when they're flicking through the phone and they're flicking on social media. So you're actually finding that the time that they're spending is just the want to keep themselves busy. I think our kind of drop in when you look at the overall numbers is due to the crisis.
Yep. And then I guess just from my side, we've seen a similar thing as well. We've seen, a lot of people working additional. So part of it is where people are recognizing that they're able to help organizations who really make a difference. We are seeing people work an awful lot of hours and really working weekends, working round the clock, and particularly our infrastructure teams have just been doing an incredible job. But I think it is in part as well that when people are isolated at home, they are looking for things to keep them busy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, sorry, go on, Chris. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think we have a hand up as well, if we've got time. Was it Jane Thomas, maybe?
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. If I could just come in there and say, firstly, great session this afternoon. Can I just home in on the opportunities for just one moment and talk about sort of the future, where this is going in the future? And I guess it may be, and I'm conscious, Laura, that you're answering all of the questions this afternoon, but having been there and with respect worn the T-shirt, what are the big lessons learned from this whole experience? You've talked about that great 4-week comms plan. What else has come out as some top tips that we can share with our audience this afternoon? Have you got any that you can share, that lessons learned? Definitely take that forward.
Yep. For me, it's two pieces. It's speed and it's communication are definitely the biggest things that I've kind of experienced through this. I think one of our things as a business where we spend so much time in projects, making sure we iron out the detail, making sure we repeatedly test things, making sure we have 300 people sign each activity off. And I think many businesses have kind of fallen into that for obvious reasons, but that all disappeared within this. And I think one of the biggest learning curves outside of this is I think we all need to kind of reevaluate some of the decision making on things like projects and change processes that say how can we ensure that we can accelerate some of these decisions and make sure that we're going at a speed that we did at COVID-19, because things happened instantly, not over weeks and months. Which for me was great. Second piece, communication, and for me at all levels. So it's no good that advisors hear the same voice and the same voice saying it. So I can speak on behalf, and I do weekly departmental sessions with them, but they also hear off our CEO, they also hear off the group CEO, and they also hear off the group COO, and they have the opportunity in each one of those forums to ask any questions. So they're getting to see at all levels the same consistent message, which is key, that they're not hearing one message from me and another from the business, but the message is always consistent, and they're getting it at different times and by different people. So that's been for me one of the biggest things, that everybody has come together in this and give as much time. Everybody's time is changing on different things, so we're all really busy still, but it's on different things, and we all look at our diary. People engagement has taken over our day-to-day is.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm picking up from an industry perspective is that the novelty of working from home is very much starting to wear off. And the other piece that's coming into it, maybe for all to consider, is that now is the time to start looking at personal development plans, looking how you realign the training that was going on and how it can go on for the future, and really engaging with individuals to take them through a little bit of the feel of business as usual, but it's not actually, but trying to build now something in that is certainly taking them forward, and recognizing also that it change is with us. And to that end, really making the most of the live information that you're getting. One of the key things I've just picked up very quickly, and I'll just share it with you, is I had a conversation yesterday and I asked the same question: what's the big key change that you've seen in your business? And that clearly was that the use of technology to communicate on a consistent basis with the team has been outstanding. In fact, the guy said to me, he's never communicated so much and directly with his team, and I think that's the great opportunity it's given us all.
Brilliant, thank you, Jane, and again, Laura. I'm conscious we're past the 2:40 cut-off that I committed to, but it's been great to have some fantastic questions. So thank you. I don't see any more questions, so. Just to finish off, a massive thank you to everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Big thanks to Laura from Slater Gordon, who's given up a lot of time to help with this webinar, obviously, when I know you're rushed off your feet anyway, Laura. Thank you very much to Chris as well from 8x8, and then big thanks to one of my colleagues, Mohammed, who has put a lot of work into setting this session up for us all. So thank you, everybody. If you do have any questions, I think you got the invitation for today from Mohammed, so feel free to mail him back if you want to follow up with anything. And that aside, I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank
you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.